Hey everyone, it's Maria here. Welcome to this week's live Q&A session. I am at a bar running this live Q&A. You never know where life takes me, so great to be here with you today. I look forward to some amazing questions that you've submitted for the week. Okay, let's start with... We have so many really good questions. Okay, let's start with this. You talk about turning your coping mechanism into a superpower. Please, can you expand on it? Yes, I can indeed expand on it. So, when we grow up and throughout our lives, we come up with or we begin to behave in a way that is a coping mechanism. So something happens to us or something happens in our lives that really affects us. And in order for us to be able to cope with whatever is going on, we come up with a mechanism to cope with it. So, for example, for people whose parents maybe didn't care about them, didn't offer nurturing, the person's coping mechanism might be, becoming manipulative so that you can get the kind of nurturing from people that you want. Or for somebody who maybe felt really dis actually I would maybe somebody who felt that they weren't appreciated as the person that they weren't given independence. That person's coping mechanism might be that they turn away from other people and become extremely introspective and introverted and just do things themselves and don't really rely on other people to get anything. And oftentimes when we talk about coping mechanisms, we talk about it in a really bad way. And of course, there are things like, addiction, substance addiction or addiction to pornography or addiction to work or alcohol or food or sugar or personal development can also be a form of addiction. When we're talking about addictions are almost like an exaggerated version of that particular coping mechanism. So when I'm talking about coping mechanisms now, just bear with me. I'm not specifically talking about addiction, but there is a way for us to take our coping mechanism and turn it into a superpower. So, for example, for myself, I wasn't ever considered. I was told many times as a child by my father that I was the reason why he was so unhappy. And as a coping mechanism to that, and try to kind of prove my worth, I became very helpful. So I started helping people. I started doing things for people to a point where I became a chronic helper. And for those of you who know what it's like to be a chronic helper, you know exactly what I mean. It's like, you can't help yourself but to help others. You can't stop yourself from prioritizing other people's needs and then attend to those needs as well. So for me, a coping mechanism of becoming a compulsive or chronic helper, I could have just said, hey, this is really bad. I'm a bad person for being like that. It's really dysfunctional. It's displaced behavior. I could have just started going down the road of criticizing myself for it and did for years. But then at some stage I realized that actually because of these bad childhood experiences, because of these coping mechanisms, I have a very specific set of skills which makes me very, very good at what I'm doing. So somebody asked me once, how can you be such a good mentor? Like how can you really meet the person where they are, and then support them in where they're going? And my answer to that was my coping mechanism. It's because I grew up to become a chronic helper, a compulsive helper, and that's why. Because I grew up because I wasn't getting love, I wasn't getting acceptance, I wasn't getting care, nurturing. I grew up manipulating people to get that. So I learned to be very manipulative. at a young age. And then instead of trying to hide the ability to manipulate, instead of, making it to be something bad, which it could be, absolutely, it could be something bad. I decided that I'm going to put it into action. I'm going to embrace it, and I'm going to start, making something good with it. And I started teaching at a very young age. So I took what was a coping mechanism, what was a painful reality for me back then, and turned it into this superpower where now, instead of manipulating you to get what I want, I'm manipulating you to get you what you want. So I've taken that I've owned it, I've taken that power, and now I'm directing it at a specific thing. I think a really great extreme example of this, what I'm talking about here, is if you know that TV show Dexter, where Dexter is a serial killer, but he realized early in his youth, and I'm hoping that I'm not giving anything away. It's an old TV show, so I'm hoping I'm not spoiling anything. But at some stage, the father realized that the son Dexter was sociopathic, and he took his sociopathy and gave it direction, and taught him how to, because he was a serial killer, how to kill the bad guys, so to speak. I'm not, this isn't a statement about my belief whether that was valid or not. I'm just using this as an example to show you that, as an extreme example of how that kind of, pain, or how that dysfunction that you have can actually serve good as well. Now, again, personally, I don't condone killing people. I hope it's really clear. But you can take that whole, what you believe is a dysfunction, what you believe is flawed about you, what you believe is bad about you. You can take that piece, and if you direct it correctly, if you just embrace it, own it, and then start directing it at a specific thing that is actually not so good in the world, you'll be able to make a lot of difference. And that was something that made a big difference to me. Owning the manipulation, owning my pain, doing the inner parenting around it, and then looking at all the different four people within me, and seeing how can we work together, how can we utilize everything that we've got to do some good in the world. So that's how I did it. That's how I have helped others do it. The pain that we suffer is there for a purpose, but you may not know what the purpose is yet if you're still in the pain. All right, so that's my answer to that question. I hope that makes sense. If you have any follow-up questions, any comments, confusions around it, please put some comments into the comment section, and we can continue this conversation from there. And if you are a part of our Facebook group and you haven't used your gift voucher for a free one-to-one mentoring call with one of our qualified mentors, then by all means, make sure that you take advantage of that. You might think that you're not ready. You might think that you're not, that there's something significantly wrong with you, or that you're broken. But the thing is that whatever you've got, that's perfect. It's a perfect starting point. There is so much for you even beyond your pain.